they would be somewhat elongated.
So Abraham Maslow has come to be associated with one of the most influential concepts in all of psychology, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And as I invoke that concept, some people will think of a pyramid, where at the base of the pyramid you have physiological needs, then safety needs, then needs of belonging and love, then self-esteem needs, and then at the apex of the pyramid, self-actualization. The only problem with that picture is that it's wrong, despite it being in all the textbooks on the subject. If you look at Maslow's original writings, and I was first made aware of this by a book called Transcend by Scott Barry Kaufman. But if you look at Maslow's original writings, you'll never find a pyramid. And so that pyramid actually came later through a management consultant, but it's not in any of Maslow's original writings. And so what Maslow actually proposed is something more like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, where it's like, just because you've met your physiologial needs and your safety needs doesn't mean that you can kind of let go of those. It should be integrated. And, sometimes when we go for like mastery, so like self-esteem needs, sometimes you have to let go of, let's say, belonging. Like the people around you don't necessarily support you, or they disagree with the direction you want to go for your life. So you might actually have to let go of that belonging need temporarily in order to shoot for something like mastery. So that's the first thing. Maslow never proposed a pyramid, and he never gave us this kind of video game-like vision of life where you kind of level up. In addition to that, towards the end of his life, so Maslow actually had a near-death experience, and he began to kind of rethink his view on human fulfillment and flourishing. And he explicitly said that self-actualization is not enough, and it's certainly not the peak. So he actually wrote an essay called A Critique of Self-Actualization, which is crazy, given that we associate Maslow with self-actualization as the peak of human flourishing. And so I thought I would begin by reading a couple of sentences from that essay. He says, "It must be stated that self-actualization is not enough," which already is such a mic drop moment for Maslow. The popular view of Maslow is that he's the self-actualization guy. So he says, "It must be stated that self-actualization is not enough. The good of other people must be invoked, as well as the good for oneself." So it's not that we're letting go of self-actualization. It's rather that we need to view it in kind of a broader frame of, what's best for humanity. "It's quite clear that a purely individualistic psychology, without reference to other people, is not adequate." He then goes on to say, "The fully developed and very fortunate human being tends to be motivated by values which transcend his self." So so today's topic is responsibility. And the reason that I wanted to come at this topic with that framing is because I have personally found that self-actualization is not sufficient. And that almost organically, I found that the next stage would be self-transcendence, or to focus on everybody getting better, to focus on the betterment of humanity and human flourishing, not just from an individualistic point of view. And I think that you're an embodiment of this, because when you achieve something, you immediately share it. Like your whole gymnastics journey, where you go for really difficult skills, it's just all there. Even with this podcast, you thought, okay, we were talking about these really interesting things, and then your immediate desire was to share it with everybody. So what do you think about this framing, man, around self-actualization and self-transcendence?
That's very kind of you to say, man. I like it. I like that. It feels nice and right to me that being individualistic is not enough, and so this is a bit of a surprise to me. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but as you were saying it all, I think that all sounds like I would agree with it. Yeah, it's all pretty deep. I'm curious, thinking. So you've already self-actualized, in a way. My guess is, and please tell me when you think you had this. Was that when you got accepted into? You finished chemistry, was it? And then.
Well, it's interesting that you say that. It's just because it sounds like a grandiose thing. It's almost like saying, "I'm enlightened."
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Some would think it's like where you strive to get but never do, sort of thing, right? But that's not the case. Maybe we should.
Well, maybe, man. Like, because these are things to strive for, but never to arrive. I don't think we ever arrive. I think that any picture of human flourishing that has as a goal to arrive somewhere is just fatally flawed. I think, one of the reasons that humans are the most successful species of all time is because we're never satisfied. So then I think it's like, don't get sad about that, accept it, and then fucking embrace it. Like, that's the truth of human psychology. So I don't know if I've self-actualized, but I certainly have, in my case, man, what I realized, and, because we talked in recent podcasts about how I might want to step away from academia, and I've got new things to say about that. But, one of the reasons that I thought I should step away is because I personally have achieved everything I wanted to do in academia. I achieved all of my goals. So I don't know if I would say that was self-actualization.
And to say what I mean with that, it's my understanding is kind of like realizing yourself, your true essence.
Yeah. What
matters to you, what you care about, and kind of understanding that, and then also like living it in a way.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Like expressing your true potential. Which just already that is like an amazing thing.
Or expressing yourself truly, would you say?
Well, I don't know about that, because you could express yourself truly and not have reached your potential.
So the potential is important.
I think so. Yeah. In order to be self-actualized, I think there needs to be like a striving.
Yeah, cool. That implies like a bit of discipline.
I think so.
A bit of hard work, not just.
Yeah.
Not just chilling and accepting yourself in a way.
Yeah. I think so. I don't think that chilling and just relaxing is that fulfilling.
Yeah. I certainly don't think so.
Yeah, I mean,
there's nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with it.
I could probably do a bit more of it, to be honest.
Really interesting, because towards the end of his life, Maslow began focusing on something that he called the B realm, or the realm of pure being. So he said that a lot of us, for most of our lives, or maybe all of our lives, we live in, I think it was called D needs. So we live from a place of deficiency. So we, the things that we strive for are because of things that we think we're missing. We think that we don't have enough money. We think that we're not attractive enough. We think that we're not popular enough. We think that we're not enough in some sense. So we begin to strive out of a sense of, let's say, fear. But towards the end of his life, he began to get interested in this realm of pure being, where it's much more associated with episode 3, where you just see what's here now when there's no problem to solve. And for you, there was a spontaneous calling back to beauty and comfort. So in this B realm, you focus on things like goodness, truth, beauty, creativity, things that he says that this is only happens to the very fortunate person, right? Because these are things that are only possible to think about if there is no problem to solve. It must be really difficult to think about these things if you're in a war-torn country, or if you're suffering from dysentery or stuff like that. I'm not saying that you can't become self-actualized in troubled circumstances, but just that on the spectrum between D needs and the B realm, you're probably going to be on those D needs a little bit more. So
what D needs?
Sorry, D is deficiency needs. So
and B realm.
B is for so it's capital B as in being.
Okay.
Your being. So it's interesting because what I would say, man, is that and it's funny because I think for me, it comes back to this idea of balance. We've talked about. I think in one episode you said, "I know you're not a fan of balance." Actually, what I said was, "I'm not sure I'm a fan."
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I was being
No.
joking around a little bit.
That's a subtle point.
Yeah.
What I'm saying, but so it comes back to this thing of like, do we want to balance our deficiency needs with our pure being in this pure being thing? And I actually think that you want to integrate all of these things. That it's not about a balance. It's about satisfying all of them in a holistic way. Similarly, I think it's about integrating self-actualization with self-transcendence. He says that you need to integrate. It's taking care of your own needs as well as the needs of others. It's not that once you've taken care of your needs, you forget about your needs and you just focus on the needs of others. No, and I think it's like. It's an incomplete picture if you're just thinking about how you're going to actualize yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, nice. I think one reason I love sharing, well, I feel ultimately like all that really matters in life is like connecting with people. I mean, sorry, I shouldn't say that all that matters, but it's really important, I think. Like, to go through a life individually would seem like quite a loss and a shame. So connecting with people is there's something magical about that. And then so being able to just share things with people, it's also exciting. You don't know how someone is going to respond, and so someone might respond completely differently to what you expected. Someone else might also do the reverse and surprise you with and I think there's just so many positives in it. A lot of people enhance that, add ideas, the next thing after that comes from that. Yeah. And as you know, I just love doing things that are exciting, so I think it's exciting to share things with people ultimately.
Yeah, it makes me, what I was just thinking about is like, I think there's like a push these days to become independent. Like it's virtuous to be financially independent and to be a strong, independent woman. And what I've come to find in my own life is that this thing around independence is a total myth. That if you look at these people that call themselves independent, actually they depend on a huge number of people. And so you might think, well, the only way to be independent, truly independent, is like if you go out and like live in the woods, and you kill your own food and you get your own water from the river or whatever. But actually, if you talk to those people, they have such an intimate connection with nature that they would say that they're grateful that they have that nature's there that provides for them. That when they kill an animal, that there's a certain level of reverence that they have. Okay, I'm taking this animal's life. So I've come to find that I don't think there is an example of somebody that's independent in any real way. And that we always depend on people.
Makes me think of, I'm pretty sure it was you saying it, like, the better thing is just to not want the thing in there. I mean, obviously you need food at the base level, but to be independent from a lot of things could maybe be to just not need a lot of things.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of someone we would think is independent, but because I haven't thought about it too much, but I'm just curious to think about that.
Let's take Beyonce, strong, independent woman, right? First of all, she has a husband and all that kind of thing, and I don't think that she would say that she's independent in that sense. But what I'm saying is, somebody, let's take just an abstract person who's like a millionaire, who doesn't have to work a job. I think that's kind of what people think about as being independent. But who cooks that guy's food? Who built the house that he's living in? Who flew the jet that took him to the place? He didn't do all of those things himself. He used money to pay those people. but money is just a story, right? What actually happened was that he needed these things, and then other people made that happen for him. So I can't think of an example of anybody that's truly independent.
They depend on their money in a way.
Sure, but they depend on if any one of those people refused to give, so he could give the money, and then the person could simply refuse to to perform the service, let's say. So he relies on them to perform that service for him. And so you might say, well, he could go to somebody else, but then he relies on that person.
I felt there's enough people in the world there for that to be just fine.
For what to be fine?
Like you'll find the right person that will.
Oh yeah, exactly. But you have to find a person.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And you were saying being independent is a myth.
It's a myth. Yeah,
I would even think for the hunter-gatherer people.
Exactly.
They're dependent on their government keeping that land wild, right? Not developing it, or I don't know, other external forces destroying it in a way.
Sure. Yeah. And the hunters are dependent on the gatherers, and the gatherers are dependent on the hunters.
And they're dependent on the sun.
Exactly. This is my point. That no man is an island unto himself. I don't know why we've elevated this as a virtue.
I think though, like to me, the flip side of it is you don't want to. Maybe I shouldn't say it, but it doesn't seem as what's the word? A state of perhaps not a great way to be would be depending on people and inconveniencing them. Like that's not a good feeling when, I don't know, if I think someone needs to do something for me and they don't want to do it, or, so to break free of that by being successful and then not troubling people. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
like not to be dependent on a particular person, maybe.
Yeah. Like, I mean, one example would be like the young adult that still depends on their parents for money and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's different, but that could be difficult for the parents if they have to keep working longer to make money for that kid when the kid could kind of go and do that themselves. Yeah. So I can see how in that case you would encourage...
yes, certain degree of independence.
Yeah.
Yes. This is really great. I mean, it fits really nicely with this theme of responsibility. And one of the things that I realized in my romantic relationships is that the more that you can take care of yourself, the less you are a burden to your partner. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't depend on them for certain things. I know that Stephen Covey, for instance, says that you don't want to be codependent, but interdependent.
Yeah, yeah. Same in The Road Less Traveled, mate.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. So I think, this comes back again. Actually, this really nicely ties in with this idea of like self-actualization versus transcendence, or like the individual versus the collective. That, if the individual doesn't take care of itself, it to a certain extent it is a burden on the collective. And so I think in order to be a good member of society, one has to a certain extent take care of themselves. Yeah, and we've talked about before about how it comes back to The Road Less Traveled with neuroticism, how the more that you can take ownership over the problems in your life, rather than saying it's society, it's the politics, it's the government, whatever, the more that you can take care of your own life, the more free you are in a sense, because then your problems are your own and you can solve them. But again, this needs to be, that can be taken too far of you're on your own type of thing.
Yeah. If everything is your fault.
Yeah. That's too far.
Yeah. It's a bit of a, dare I say, balance.
Yeah, maybe.
But yeah. I feel like it's helpful to err on the side of neuroticism as opposed to the other way around.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good to know when to not take responsibility for. Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky to know.
Oh, it's definitely tricky. Yeah. Yeah. So man, in my own case, what I realized was, yeah. So walking home one day, I realized, oh, I've achieved everything I wanted to do in academia. So now my role changes, and it's to make sure that the people around me get everything that they want and need. My role changed. And the reason that I know that that's true is because it made me feel so expansive. As we talked about, it's like, I'm going to feel my way through this problem. Do I have a crush on that idea, or does it really excite me? And it just felt so right, that the kind of the next stage is to be more of a supporter and more of a mentor. I've kind of gone through the certain fires, and I want to be a guide so that other people can go through those fires.
When you say expansive, you mean like you'll grow by doing that?
No. Literally feeling expansive rather than contractive.
Uh-huh.
No. I don't. It's not intellectual. It's a feeling.
I'm trying to think what that feeling feels like.
Have you ever, you get to the apex of a mountain or something like that, and you look out over a valley or something like that, and you see everything, or you're at the top of a tall building, and you kind of, there's a feeling of awe and expansiveness.
Yeah.
That's how it made me feel, to think about breaking out of the role of got to do this, got to do that, to change my perspective from what can I get to what can I give. Now that I have everything I need, how do I give?
Yeah. I'm trying to think of me having that feeling. I don't know if this is even the same thing, but that feeling of like climbing a mountain, and that I think language, like learning a foreign language, is a interesting experience, because you start not knowing anything and you know nothing, and then you learn some basic rules and start to be able to like understand a bit of grammar and make some sentences, and then your confidence will rise, and then you'll probably learn, I don't know how to put things in the past tense, for example, and then you will be like depressed because if you didn't realize that before, now you realize there's all these rules I got to learn, and also these rules are not the same as my language, like where English you put ed or whatever on it if it's past, and in Japanese or French it's different. French,
Yep.
So then in that sense, I feel like when you realize, like, because one example for me was in Japanese counting numbers, like we have like first, second, third, and if you think about it, first is random. It doesn't really have anything to do with one, and you know what I mean? But I mean, second, third, I guess they kind of relate to 2, 3, 4. But with Japanese, like first is, you don't use the Japanese word for one. It's completely different. And so anyway, these logical things in English where they kind of are similar to that thing you already know, they're totally different in Japanese. So I guess you assume that, that's going to be the same. If I know how to count to 100 in Japanese, I can also say 100 bottles, but it's it does kind of become more like that. But for say 20, the first 20 I think is you have to learn like a whole new word, and I'm not fluent in Japanese, so maybe I'm still missing things, but I guess the point was like I realized, oh my gosh, like I've got to learn these whole another 20 things here just to say bottles, and I have to remember that it's not the number one. Yeah, I'm going into this way too much, but the point was I guess going up that mountain, you it's like you go down when you realize, I don't know all those things, but when you start to learn those things, you have a clearer picture of the landscape. And I don't know if that's also the feeling of expansiveness.
I think that's like a mini version of it.
Yeah.
I think, I was just thinking about what it is, and it's like the world is different than you thought, but better. Yeah, richer, but I think in my sense it was like it felt like a really tight knot had just become untangled. I was saying to my cousin yesterday that I really like it when you delve into a problem and then you realize that the way to resolve the problem is that you had the wrong framing. Actually, the problem that you thought needed to be solved does not need to be solved. You were just focusing on the wrong thing. So for me, it was like, what do I do next? And then I realized, I was looking at it through the wrong frame. And yeah, it's interesting what you said about learning languages, because that was one of the initial, I would say, one of the early things that I started to do where I really loved being on a steep learning curve. So yeah, I love that feeling of being really unknowledgeable about something, and then knowing that if I work hard enough, I'll get to a place that's very different, and your whole worldview changes. I mean, language is an excellent example because it's so core, it's so intrinsic to the way that we kind of conceptualize the world.
Yeah.
Then you realize that actually those are just rules that have nothing to do with you. They're just arbitrary, built into the English language.
Yeah.
Like for instance, the way that roads are named in Japan, it's about the blocks. It's not necessarily about, we think about naming roads.
Yeah.
So that's a totally different way of kind of orienting your way around space.
That's what's the beauty of it. You realize like things you perceive as that's just how they are. Yeah. No, they're not.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how English is.
Yeah, exactly.
And you can think differently. Yeah.
Exactly.
I also love your way of looking at that, man, that an exciting challenge of how steep that learning curve is. I think that a lot of people don't think like that, and the difficulty of a new language turns them off completely, because it's there's a lot to learn, and it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
But I love your way of looking at it, man, the excitement of... So yeah, what's for you, the excitement is, wow, I don't know so much and I'm going to learn it. Is that how you think about it, or?
I think there's like a part of me that goes, that sounds really fucking hard. I can do that. Something like that.
Cool.
But it's really like, so I was telling my boss about this, about how I think I want to leave academia because I want to go into a domain where nobody cares about any of my credentials and I'm the least knowledgeable person in the room. And he just hit me with such an insightful question that just really knocked me on my ass. He goes, Nick, I might be kind of barking up the wrong tree here, but are you afraid of being the smartest person in the room because of what might happen if that's true? It's really such a insightful question. And I was like, I need to think about that. I don't know the answer to that. And so that's why today's topic is on responsibility, because I realized like there was part of me that was afraid of being responsible for another person. That if I'm the smartest person in the room and everybody's looking to me for the answers, then in some sense I was just scared that I might do all of them wrong by leading them down the wrong path or whatever. And what I've come to understand is, first of all, and actually this podcast has been useful in helping me understand this, is that in this podcast, we're both dedicated to getting closer to the truth and just exploring things with an open mind. And in the beginning, I think I was more like, I went into a professorial mode where like I put the pressure on myself to kind of know things and then to be like, this is the answer, let me expound that. And what I've realized in the course of these podcasts is that actually I don't know all the answers, and that's fine. Which sounds simple, but it's profound. It was profound for me.
It's liberating as well.
Very liberating.
Yeah. Because I think if you think of anything deep enough, you don't know it.
You don't. That's the wonderful thing, man.
and it's stifling if you think, well, I have to know it to be able to talk about it.
Bro, when I was at, I might have told you, but when I was at Harvard, I would tell these people this amazingly interesting thing, and they'd be like, "Oh yeah, I already knew that." Like, "Oh yeah, I know." Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Like. There was no space to not already know the answer, because you're supposed to already know at Harvard.
To clarify, I'm quite sure you're referring to the fact that they would pretend they know to not appear dumb.
That's right.
Yeah, it's not a good way to be.
I found it so stifling and just dishonest.
Yeah.
But more than that, what's the opposite of liberating? Like so constraining, confining, and so way too much pressure.
So like worried about asking a silly question and all that kind of thing.
100%, man. So that I think I put that pressure on myself of like, I probably had an idea of what an academic was, and I had all these expectations around being a professor and like just knowing things. So I put that pressure on myself, and then it just made it, I think I was overwhelmed by the idea that people would be coming to me for advice. And then I put the pressure on myself of, if they ask me a question, I have to 100% know what the answer is. Now I more think about it from a perspective of, I've actually achieved quite a bit, and I might not know the answer, but I'll be able to take you part of the way there. And so if it's a student who I'm like 10 years ahead of, and I'm just ahead of where they'd like to be in their path, like it's clear that I have something to add. I might not know 100% what the answer is, but I'll have something to add. And
nice.
Yeah, it really things changed for me when, I think I told you, we had these planning days where everybody at the institute was like presenting what they were going to do and talking about their plan for the next year. And like almost every PhD student came and asked for my advice, and a lot of the postdocs came and asked for my advice as well. And I just realized that I actually have a lot to offer. I might not know 100% what the answer is, but I'm experienced in ways that can be useful to these people. And
they also sensed it, because they came to you without you like putting it out there in a way, right? You just do your thing, is that right?
Bro, if I'm honest, I think I put out the opposite energy.
Yeah.
Of don't ask me things.
Yeah.
And so
why did they come to you then?
Because I think I had something unique to say.
On that day, did you say, anyone with questions, please?
Well, that was the point. That was the point of this event, that like we get together and you ask for help. Okay.
So it was like their one chance to finally talk.
That's
to this
right.
guy.
And I got so many people asking questions because they were like, this is my one shot.
Yeah.
So I realized, it was really nice that, first of all, I do have something to offer. And second of all, that it doesn't presuppose that I know everything, but rather that I just know a little bit more than that person. And
this is making me think. This is so cool, man. So Hiroaki Sato, Uchimura's previous personal coach, now the coach of the Japanese national team. I know that he has a bunch of core values that he applies to his coaching, which is amazing and great and very Japanese. And one of them is humility. And it was really cool because I think he had 4. It's funny, I love to say them all, but I also, out of respect for him, don't necessarily want to tell everyone all these things in case, because it's a competitive sport.
Wait, so 4 others? So then 5?
4 in total, I think.
4 in total?
Yeah.
4 cardinal virtues.
Yeah. Anyway, but it was cool because when I heard them all, I thought, oh yeah, that makes sense. Humility, and I thought that's interesting because if you're thinking about being a competitive athlete, the best in the world, I don't think you'd straight away think, oh, humility is essential. But I realized, like, thinking about it quickly, I thought, there's a lot of benefits to humility.
Yes.
One of them, because I would say what we're saying now is the humility of teaching someone and knowing I might not know everything. You know, I might be wrong even.
Yes.
Because and in the sense of an athlete, I think my interpretation, I'd love to ask Hiro about this, and I can in the future, but my interpretation of that would be, even if you're an incredibly high level athlete, if you have humility, you'll still learn. People can teach you more things. If you think I'm the best, even if you are the best, if you're arrogant, you're probably not going to learn anything new.
Yep.
So yeah, that's so. It just made me think of that. In the sense of also how you're saying, not putting that much pressure on yourself. I think that's just humility. That's my way of seeing that.
Yeah, and I think we might have talked about it before, but it's like, for me, like, the people that I find most impressive in my own life are very humble. I think that's part of what drives them. They just know how imperfect they are, and so they want to strive. And actually, when I was lecturing statistics, it was very liberating to somebody would ask a question, and mate, I prepare for those. I mean, even though I don't rehearse, I will think for every lecture, I will imagine what questions might come up and then prepare answers to all of those questions.
Nice.
And I'm talking between half a dozen and a dozen questions that I've got prepared answers for. But every now and then they catch me off guard and ask a question I wasn't prepared for. And it was very liberating to go, it's a really good question. I've never thought about that. Thank you. I'll think about that. And it was just interesting that that
was your natural response as well.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What's interesting is that when you're in these kind of, for me, lecturing is a flow state. You don't have any time to think. So these answers would just come out naturally. And what was really cool in that moment is I just felt the vibe of the room feel like more connected to me.
Yeah.
That this guy is truthful. He's honest.
Yeah.
And we're in this together.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not a superior being.
Definitely not.
Yeah. Which they might feel if you deflect that or something.
I'll tell you a funny story though, because one time I came to a lecture and it was raining, pissing rain, man. It was really hard rain, and so my shoes were wet and my socks were all soggy. So I took my shoes. And I was afraid that if I gave the lecture with wet shoes and socks, that my voice would be all hoarse and I get, So then I took my shoes and socks off and I gave the lecture with no shoes on. Nice. And just the level of respect went down in the room. You could just see people kind of looking down. I was like, damn, now they're distracted by my feet.
Okay. So, I thought you were going to say, that's funny, I thought you were going to say they respected the genuineness and this guy's just here to do the thing.
Well, that's how I felt, but
it's
not what I saw. Because it is kind of weird. I was so comfortable lecturing with no shoes on, but it was weird to them. But it was really liberating that I could just not know the answer and be truthful about that. And then, it would be true that I would come back and, because I said, look, let me think about that and get back to you. You lose the trust if you don't get back to them.
Yeah.
You got to get back to them. So I would get back to them.
The next lecture you opened with that, did you not?
Yeah, I would often do that. Yeah. And the other thing that I did was I would call people by name.
That's so cool.
Yeah, because I think then people are like, oh shit, this guy is paying attention.
That's impressive, man. How do you, because you would have had 100 at least students?
But only 10% of them ask questions.
Okay.
So
yeah. So what, you asked them for their name?
I always ask them for their name. Yep.
Yeah.
I just happen to have a good memory for names. That's one of the things that I used to do when I was teaching chemistry, because I would have 30 students, so I would memorize the roll and then be like, John, Macy, David, and point to them and go through and they'd be like, oh crap, this guy's paying attention. Nice. And also, he's got a good brain if you can remember that many names.
That's a very charismatic quality, I reckon, man, remembering names.
Yeah. They definitely appreciated it.
Yeah. Something I want to be better at.
Yeah, I don't know why. I just have a good memory for names. It's nothing that I've worked at.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really useful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very respectful in a way as well.
I used to think that, and then now I don't take any credit for it because my brain does it automatically, and I know that for some people, it is difficult for them to remember names, and it's not their fault.
That's a nice way to look at it.
I just think that's true.
But, I mean, I'm not going to say it's disrespectful if you don't remember a name, but if you've put the effort in...
What I'm saying, Lockie, is that I didn't put the effort in.
Yeah. But some people might.
Sure. Yeah. I put the effort in to read the roll and then just my brain memorized them.
Yeah.
Yep. But, so on this thing of responsibility, it made me realize that I suppose that the most the paragon example of being responsible for somebody is like a parent-child relationship, and it made me realize that everybody's an imperfect parent, and everybody's an imperfect supervisor, and everybody's an imperfect boss, everybody's an imperfect whatever they are, and I think I had this in my head that you needed to be perfect in some sense in order to take responsibility for other people. And yeah, humility is a useful tool to be like, I don't know the answer, but I will get back to you. I promise, and we'll work it out together.
Yeah, I think humility is essential for growth, I think I would say.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, arrogance is no fun.
Yeah.
It's no fun to be that guy.
Although, isn't arrogance itself a subjective judgment, wouldn't you say? Because what someone might see as an arrogant person, someone else might just see as a confident person, right? The difference is...
sure. Yeah.
When someone is so confident that they maybe lose their humility. But you can be confident and have humility at the same time, would you not say?
Yeah. Although those things seem to be antithetical, don't they? To be confident but humble.
I think so. I'm trying to think. I think Uchimura is a great example of this. Like surely he's confident because he's so incredible.
No, but that's your evaluation of him. Confidence is not what other people say.
Yeah, okay. But I sense it. Like,
okay.
Like I've been lucky enough to meet him.
Yep.
Everything he did seemed intentional. I didn't sense any, because I guess the opposite of confidence is lack of confidence, like second guessing and uncertainty. I didn't sense any of that, but he was incredibly humble as well.
Might be like, because I don't know.
I like the way you think though. That who knows?
Well, I mean that's just true, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? But because for instance, I remember early on in my singing career, being like, "Damn, I was so nervous," and people were like, "Really? Yeah. You look so confident." I think that happens often. That like internally you're struggling and it comes off as confident.
Well, I'm trying to think for myself then. I would like to think if I'm going into a gymnastics thing, I feel pretty confident about my abilities. But I would let's say I was going to the gym with someone that doesn't train that much, teaching them some things, and they had some comments for me. This actually, because it actually happened. I went with this girl, and she was like a ballet dancer, and so I was teaching her front flips, and she was doing a really good job of progressing pretty quickly. And we had an interesting conversation where I was like, "This is why gymnastics is so good." Like, 'cause we were constantly, because I was training with her, like breathing heavily, because she'd go, then I'd go, then she'd go, then I'd go, and it was great because we're both having so much fun. We're both like breathless, and I was like, how great is this? Like, we're doing cardio now and we don't even realize it because we're so focused on the flip, like, oh, that one I could have done better in this way, as opposed to, I don't know, for me running. Yeah, you're aware I'm running. It's gonna be a while. So anyway, so we were chatting about like. This is one thing I love about gymnastics. It's. I think it's the most challenging physical activity you can do, and that's why I love it. I think if I thought there was something more challenging, I would do that instead. And she challenged it with ballet, in really interesting ways, saying like how obsessed they are with like the perfection. To which, but it was a good discussion because I was like, well, gymnasts are also obsessed with that, like. Only when you really know the sport, can you know the extent of it. So I was aware that, look, I don't know much about ballet, so I'm sure there's a lot that I don't know about. But anyway, I guess the point was, I would like to think I was confident in that situation. I was confident about my gymnastics skills teaching her, but when she had comments about anything, I would like to think I was humble enough to like not just like discard them, but to consider them, and yeah. So in that sense, I would hope I had both.
Yeah.
And in fact, in most things I do, I would like to have both. I think
that's good.
Yeah, I think confidence is pretty important. Because it's almost like self-belief, right? And without that, I mean, especially as an artist, you you have to believe in what you feel is right, because if not, and you have no direction, wouldn't you say?
No, I mean, I feel like there are a lot of artists with a lot of self-doubt.
Yeah.
Crippling self-doubt.
That's true.
No, but it's interesting that you feel that way. And I think that that's an honest appraisal of yourself. For me, man, the way that I get to where you are is thinking about myself from a third person perspective of like, if I was to encounter that guy, would I be impressed by him? Yeah. Then I was like, oh yeah, I would be. I'd like to meet that guy. So it's interesting. I almost have to divorce myself from my own.
So you think about yourself if you met yourself?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's how you assess your confidence?
That's how I'm able to be like, that guy's competent. Yeah, because from my side, I can see all of my flaws. So then it's like you begin to fixate on those. But everybody has flaws. So it's interesting that when you look at somebody from a third person perspective, because you're not living their life, you focus less on I focus less on their flaws and more about their accomplishments. So then, when I look at myself from a third person perspective, I go, okay, like I know some things. So that's the route that I have to take to get to where you are naturally.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like I'm guessing. I think people would think I'm arrogant. Yeah. So. Yeah. In the sense of maybe, if you don't know me, and this is a guess. Again, I don't even know if people think I'm arrogant, but I'm pretty sure some people would think that. My assessment of that would be like, if I'm someone that does things I believe in, you might see there's arrogance in that. I don't know, without knowing more deeply of, do you know what I mean?
Well, and now I'm just, actually what arose just now was like, who cares? Like, of course there's going to, like, sometimes people are going to have these negative evaluations of us that have nothing to do with who we really are. And sometimes it says more about that person than it does about you. Yeah, like we talked about with Aristotle, how like, if you're a coward, then what you think is bravery is still cowardly. So if you're an insecure person, if you see somebody that's confident, maybe you go, well, that person's arrogant.
Yeah. So
I don't know. I understand that it's annoying if somebody calls you arrogant, but I think it says more about them.
Is it funny? Because I don't think I'd find it annoying. I would be more like, oh, like, why is that?
Okay. You arrogant Kent.
Yes. To try and understand it, because also, like, hopefully that's being humble. Am I arrogant? Like, in some way, is there something
that's healthy?
Depending on the person, I suppose. If it was someone that you don't think has like your best interest at heart, then maybe it's better not to. Yeah. And anyway, so would you think that arrogance is like a humility? Confidence would lack a humility? Or do you think of it differently?
I don't know.
Nice, that's very humble of you. Yes!
I don't know. I think that it's probably just a negative label that we associate with people. Like, it's just... I think that sometimes it's a reflexive, just, that person's arrogant. I don't necessarily know that they've thought it through with a criteria of, okay...
Yeah.
They've met these criteria, so therefore they're arrogant. I think it's more of a feeling about that person.
I just keep thinking of Vegeta.
You think he's arrogant?
Oh, surely. At least early on in Dragon Ball Z.
Crippling self-doubt, my friend.
Yeah, that's true. Very interesting. In his sense, you'd say it because or maybe is it only like exterior arrogance, but not.
No. I think that's always true, Lockie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dragon Ball Z is so good.
Yeah.
That's really interesting, man.
I'll tell you something funny, which is this morning I took the train and I always listen to a podcast or something, and I was like flicking through, and somebody comes up behind me and goes, "Did you not hear the announcement?" And I guess it was the last stop, and so I was just sitting on an empty train. And I go, "Oh, sorry, is this the last stop?" And she goes, "You really should listen to the announcements. Get off!" Like she was just so rude and dismissive.
Is it a random person?
No. It was it was somebody. It was staff.
Right.
And it was interesting because then I felt bad for a while, and I was like, "Does she think I'm an idiot?" Or I don't know. I had some story about why would she treat me like that, and then I was like, "Oh, that's her own. It's got nothing to do with me."
Yeah.
And then I was like, I just felt compassion for her because I was like, I'm sure that there are some people who are rude or whatever that are like delinquents that want to stay on the train. And so then I was like, she has to assume that I'm one of those people. Makes sense. So it's funny.
She doesn't have to, but okay.
I can understand why she would. So then I was like, okay, it does. But then I don't know why, but I felt this like, sometimes it's like that person said something and maybe that's a true evaluation of us. And then I was like, well, no, actually not really. She doesn't really know who I am. And, but it did catch me off guard for a little while. I had to like work that one through.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's I didn't mean to be insensitive, but that's kind of what I meant when I said, who cares?
Yeah.
Like the arrogant label says more about that person than it does about you.
I think I would care though if it was a close friend.
Close person, yeah.
If you said I'm arrogant, I'd be like, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
That's true.
It's funny, the more I think about it, it really feels like a hard to pin.
Lucky, they're all hard to. That's what I'm.
Yeah.
Fun is hard to pin down. It's my belief that they're all hard to pin down.
Confident.
It's all like when we try and get down to the definition of anything, it's always hard to pin down. So we should. I'll definitely do a podcast on this one day because we keep coming back around to it.
Which is what?
Which is the a focus on precise definitions.
Okay. Well, the thing is, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because you have to, even to a kid, define it so they kind of know what you're talking about.
You don't. You just go, that's green, that's green, that's green, and
right.
they begin to pattern recognize. Green. Yeah. Okay, so then they might be like, oh, I guess green is car because everything that he's shown me is a car. Yeah. And then you have to show them a green sweater and be like, no, it's not the car.
So dictionaries are useless.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, you could go through. I think that you could go through your whole life never having read a dictionary and being an absolute fluent speaker of English, a fluent speaker of any language.
Yeah.
Grammar and dictionaries are retrospective. And in fact, a dictionary definition will change if the popular definition changes. So it's only retroactive that we then begin to try and codify after the fact. Same with grammar. We try and codify a language after, without, it's not as if we wrote grammar down first and then constructed a language. I know that there have been attempts to do that.
Korean, baby.
But
or at least for the written language. I mean, it was very intentional.
They came up with a grammar first and then?
I think the king created the... this I might be super ignorant, but I think they were using Chinese characters and they wanted to create their own. So, so the king created the Hangul characters, which are really well designed. But I don't think it applies to the grammar. It's just the written system.
Okay. Yeah. But what I was going to say is that prey comes from Chinese, which is correct, right? So there was already a language structure that had evolved organically, and then we retrospectively imposed grammar onto it. Yeah. So dictionaries cool, and grammar books are useless. It's no good to approach a language by learning the grammar. It's much better that you just get because it's so artificial. Yeah. Why is that? There are tons of exceptions. There are so many exceptions to the rule.
But it's funny because I feel like there is value in learning. Even I have to say I find it useful when I'm learning Japanese and that how do you make past tense? I don't know. You just kind of have to. And even in English, if I hear a word I don't understand, often you can figure it out with context. But sometimes I really want to know what that specific word means, and I'll look it up. Am I a bad person by doing that, Nick? Yes. No, but so I see the value in that, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, the interesting thing is I think it gives you maybe a more precise understanding of that word.
I wouldn't say precise.
Okay. A more focused. Yeah.
You're just using a thesaurus.
Synonyms, baby. Yeah. But yeah,
it's all nebulous because, as I said, things change.
Yeah.
The definitions of words change. But I understand what you're saying. Like, it gives you some indication.
You have to have an understanding, and then and then it's a broader thing. Like we're saying, where you don't have to be able to pin. You don't have to pin it down. Yeah, that's really cool, man. I think I agree.
Yeah, like I don't think I read any grammar textbooks when I was learning French, and I got to a conversational level. So,
how'd you conjugate everything, mate? Just by listening.
Same way that I conjugate things in English.
That's hectic, man. It makes sense for your first language, but for the for a second one, that's impressive. I mean, it makes sense though. I think, yeah, even watching K-dramas and that, you just start noticing little things. Yeah. But
how stifling would it be if when you were speaking a second language, to have to think, okay, how do I conjugate this?
Yeah.
It's every sentence is gonna take 2 minutes.
But I feel like as a noob, that's how it starts, and then it.
I think it often starts that way, and I just find that to be completely unnecessary. Total perversion.
Interesting.
Nobody learns their first language that way, so I don't know why there's a new rule for learning other languages that way.
Yeah.
And I mean, just look at polyglots online. They're not reading grammar textbooks. Maybe they will out of fun, but they'll go straight to the source.
Interesting. I hear what you're saying, but I still feel like it was helpful for me learning Japanese to just learn little rules that you can quickly then apply, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you make it I want instead of, you know? Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a little bit different. I guess in English you say I want X, but in Japanese it's like you conjugate things. Like if you conjugate the verb, if you want to eat, you add something to eat. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I guess you could figure that out, but it seems faster and easy for me to, that's how you do it? Cool, got it. I can now do that for every verb.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Yeah. That's how my my Japanese teacher in Japan was teaching me. Each week we would sort of be on a new thing like that. How to make you want this, and then we'd just go through a bunch of conversations in like, I want this, I want that, he wants that, she wanted that, you know.
Yeah.
Which I thought it was effective for me. Okay. And the next week will be
that's fine.
You know, what do you like that more than that? That kind of thing. Yeah.
What I'm saying is like for me, I would understand the grammar intrinsically without needing to know the rules. If you just show me the sentences, I'd pick up on the patterns. You don't have to tell me what the predicate of a sentence is. Who gives a shit? Yeah, like, I'll get that.
Logicians do, mate. Yes. You also studied logic though, didn't you, in philosophy, mate?
Yeah, I got a good grade. I got a good grade.
It's all bullcrap, mate. No. Although in that sense, it's important, isn't it?
It's not important. I mean, that logic course was really fun, but it's like not useful at all. Okay. But it was really fun.
Interesting. Some would argue that to know what is true, you must understand logic first, right?
Yeah. I haven't thought deeply enough about that.
My guess is that you would say you have to feel it to be true or something.
Something like that, yeah. It's funny how it's like I've taken the analytic route so seriously and then found the limitations of it. I mean, in the same way that like I think a lot of people who like believe in science with a capital S, like scientism, almost religious belief in science, aren't real scientists. You find that when you do science, actually the results are not incontrovertible. every experiment has flaws, and the results always come down to human interpretation. So, and yeah, we should probably go into it more on a podcast when I've thought about it more. But I think that the way we view the world is just through monkey eyes, man. Like, our conceptions of truth are based on monkeys looking at the world. I don't think there's anything transcendent about logic. I think it's...
But we should still do our best to determine truth, right? Not be lazy about it. Not just accept we're not perfect, so let's not even worry about it.
Yeah. I guess what I think is that, like, what is on offer in terms of what we can understand is quite bounded. It's bounded by our monkey brains. I mean, I don't have a strong opinion on it because obviously that's an unsolved problem, but that's my feeling. That if there is first of all, I don't think there's some bare naked truth out there. I don't think I'm convinced in the existence of objective reality or anything like that. Deep topic, man. We should definitely spend a whole podcast going into that.
I'd say some things are objectively hotter than other things.
Nice. Okay. Yeah.
You know, certain things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we can...
Somewhat elongated, man. It goes all over the place.
Yeah. Yes. Man, I made a note earlier.
Yeah.
And this is so random, and I can't remember how it was related. Maybe I just wanted it to be related.
Yes.
So, yesterday, I was training gymnastics. It was the state squad, New South Wales state squad training. And so maybe 3 times a year, all the gymnasts in New South Wales, level 7 and above, meet up and train together. And it's kind of so that you get to train with some of the guys in the other clubs that you don't normally see. You mostly see them at competitions. But also you get to train with their coaches too. So, and it's meant to improve New South Wales' level of gymnastics, you know.
Okay.
So, you know, I can train with these guys that train in that gym, and they can give me some tips, and I can ask their coach a question, and at the same time our coach can help those guys. And yeah, it's cool, it's nice, I like it. Anyway, so it was not quite a normal training session in that sense, where we were at this epic gym with all the guys, and normally I get excited about it, and it's a great session because I mean, training is always great, but now I'm even more excited. There's more people, it's a good space. Anyway, my mate, he wasn't having, he just wasn't having a good session. And which, you know, I understand that sometimes you just, it's not going right in this apparatus, you move on to the next one. It's not going right in that one. And anyway, mid session, he was telling me that, and I was trying to, I'm just curious to talk to you about this, man. Like, I was trying to, give him a, maybe what triggered this thought for me was how you said you were looking at the problem wrong before, and then now you've got a different viewpoint and it's expansive. And and I had that same feeling for him, where I understand you can have a bad session, but I think that if you have the right way of, not even the right way, but if you have a certain way of thinking about it, you can change the course of that session and find positives in it, and still have beneficial outcomes, you know. And I was trying to hit him with that in the moment of like, well, like, maybe you can work on more basic things and just make them really good. And yeah, and it was tricky. I couldn't really seem to think of anything that quite worked for him. Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, definitely. Who knows what works for anybody? You know what I mean? It's difficult to figure out. It's all person specific, but like, it's interesting because, like, you know, one answer to that is just to be fatalistic about it and be like, it's a shitty session. Let's just have a shitty session.
Enjoy the crappy session.
Yeah, maybe. But
I feel like that's bad practice. You don't want to practice.
You don't want to internalize bad habits.
Yeah, like I know from experience with gymnastics, if I'm having a bad day on a certain skill, it's better to... Yeah. A natural thing might be, I'm going to get this freaking thing. Yeah. I'm going to keep doing it, and it just kind of keeps getting worse. Yep. I think you learn, like, all right, today's not good for that, let's move on. And then the next day you come back, it's better. Rather than doing it 20 times badly today because it's just not happening today, and then maybe next session, well, you've had quite a few bad ones, so that's kind of, you've practiced a bad one, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
no, actually that's a better point than I was going to make, because this has happened to me with coding, where I realized like my brain's not in the right place, and I'm like, fuck you got to be in the right place, just get it done.
Nice.
And then the next day I'd come back and be like, this is absolute bullshit. And then the problem with that, Lockie, is that it takes longer to solve a problem that has been like, it takes longer to fix a problem that has been solved badly than it does to just solve the problem the right way the first time.
Yeah.
So I actually do have that, like, just because I've figured that out through trial and error, that because I used to push myself a lot harder at work. I used to just have this mentality of just like, you got to do it, you got to have the grind mindset. And I'd come in early and leave late, and then so often, first of all, I get burnt out. I would literally get sick. I would get burnt out. And then so often I would come in and like things weren't working, and then I was like, yeah, it's because I wrote all this dumbass code, and now I have to go. So for me, it's like I realized that you're right. It's like you want to come in. Sometimes you have to have that self-awareness that this is just not the day for this thing, and so on those days you probably want to focus on something else.
But you still want to focus on training, right? You wouldn't just stop training?
I don't know. Because what I was going to say is that I started to take like more self-care days. And man, like my results really just got like way like better and better. I mean, my supervisors would be horrified to hear this, but during my PhD, I only worked 3.5 days out of the week. And so I would take a half day on Wednesday, and then Fridays I would just take off. And I had a really productive PhD, way like exceeded all of our expectations. And I think it's because I had a really consistent self-care practice that was like around what I needed. So it was interesting because I kind of like in the beginning of my PhD, I was like really, really, really grinding myself into the ground. And then one day I was just like, what if I did the opposite? So instead of drinking coffee, I started drinking chamomile tea. And instead of coming in early, I would come in a little bit late. So I would actually, like, despite the fact that I was only working 3.5 days out of the week, I would also basically show up at 10 and leave at 4. So I was also not working a full work day. But those hours would be so focused, and there would be such high quality hours.
And so self-care, you mean listening to your need for rest? Or just
and play as well.
Yeah.
Because on that Friday, what I did was I played ping pong with one of my mates for hours. I would play ping pong.
And it's funny because externally someone might think, oh, what a lazy guy, but
exactly.
You're actually being intentional and really listening to yourself to know that I need this now so that on Monday I can work much deeper than I otherwise would be able to.
Yeah, just the results spoke for themselves. Like, I was always committed to doing really good quality work. And that's one of the other things I found at Harvard is like people would stay late just to be seen staying late, but they'd be on their phones, they'd be on Facebook. They'd be doing all kinds of bullshit just to like show that they stayed at the lab past 7 p.m. And it's like
so superficial. It's cool, man. I really like what you're saying. The trickiness with society is like, sadly, a lot of people would probably take advantage of. If that were the norm, I don't know. You know what I mean? I presume a lot of people wouldn't think deep enough to think, what do I need? And instead, sweet, I'm going to take off Friday and just goof around. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, it goes back to the framing around this conversation around integrating the needs of the self with the needs of the betterment of humanity. That like what I realized, because for me, what I realized in the course of my PhD is that when I'm operating at my best, I feel that I'm a conduit for good things to come out. I'm merely a channel for, innovation in med tech and, to get other people to a place where they understand statistics and chemistry and things. Like, I'm merely a conduit for the good stuff. And so I want to take care of that conduit. Again, just looking at it from a third person perspective. So then I realized, like, if I take care of myself, then I can be a more effective, weapon for good. So I looked at it from that perspective, around, doing what's best despite what people say is what's best. If it's right for you, it's right to do.
Nice. Cool. So, going back to the gymnastics thing. Do you have any? It was an interesting. Maybe the reason to bring up as well is, like, in the moment I was really trying to think about how to help this guy at least have some kind of positive outcome from the session, because I felt like, he's a bit down and, like, do you know? And I honestly thought, I wonder if it's just he doesn't yet have the way that works for him of approaching these kind of sessions, and maybe if he can think about it in a certain way, he can turn these sessions into a positive as well, you know? Maybe because I've been through that, I think, like, figuring out, for me, like, I think when I start focusing on basics, and I'm like, if I just do the basics well, at least I'm training something helpful, and then on another day I can come back and approach this harder skill and probably perform it much better.
That's actually, in a funny way, that's what I would do as well. On those days that I didn't feel that my brain was there, is I would focus on fundamentals. I feel like there's so much gold to be mined in just focusing on the most fundamental parts of whatever your field is.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, it's easy to get caught up in, like, the most cutting edge machine learning, blah, blah, blah. And I very much stay away from all of that stuff. I find it all to be hype. And instead I focus on things that I feel to be fundamental. So I'll try and get a really intuitive sense of, like, what a standard deviation means, which is, like, what a waste of time to think about standard deviation. But things like that, where I really want to understand, what does that mean? And
it's in the dictionary, bro.
Hey! You motherfucker. It's actually, if you read the Wikipedia page on standard deviation, it's fairly rich, and even the way that we calculate the standard deviation for the population versus a sample doing Bezel's correction, there's deep and rich things there. So that's interesting, because I would do that too, on those days where I felt that, like, this is not a coding day for me.
I love that. Again, we have the kind of quite different field, but we somehow have this similar process.
Yeah,
it's really cool. I've noticed that in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah. So here's what I'd say about this guy. That is one strategy, to focus on the fundamentals and to just be where you are. You're not ready to focus on high level skills today, and that's fine. But then what else? I didn't want to bring this up because, how do I say this? Like, I really like your positivity mindset.
Okay.
I think it's really, like, it's almost childlike and kind of cute. It's like, I want to protect that kind of thing.
Oh, thanks, man. That's cool.
But on the fun episode, I talked about how sometimes the situation does not call for fun. That if somebody's in a bad way, it's the answer is not always, how do I make this positive? That sometimes they're having a bad day and they need to be met at that frequency. That, okay, you're having a bad day. That sucks, man. Let me sit with you. Let's sit with that for a little while. And again, it's like, sometimes these bad feelings are signals that need to be listened to. And it can sometimes be that we steamroll over important emotional signals by going, just get over it, man. Let's have some fun. Let's have a good session. So yeah, it depends on, whether or not that's a really, really loud signal that needs to be listened to. Or if it's like, you're just tired, maybe you're just tired. And so, okay, if you're tired, then we can just focus on things that require less mental focus, that are less technically demanding, and still have a really good session focusing on fundamentals. And for me, I found that there was so much, as I said, there was so much gold to be mined in just focusing on the most fundamental aspects of, for instance, machine learning. I was talking to a student about this the other day, where it's like, at Harvard, I realized that some of these people don't know what a cost function is. A cost function is a very, very fundamental element of how to optimize neural networks.
Even I sort of know what that is.
Cool.
So do you want to give my layman?
The cost function is simply how well the network is doing at the task. So if you've got high cost, it means that it's doing really poorly on the task. And one question I got was like, what if we add noise to the cost function? I was like, well, how are we gonna optimize if we don't know how well we're doing? Anyway, so I found that in any field, you need to be excellent at fundamentals, and part of the reason for that is just because so few people do the work. I was saying to my brother recently that like if you just do what you're supposed to, you'll be in the top 1%. You know? So, anyway, I mean, back to your friend.
That's cool and that's motivating. Like, it's simple to do.
It's like, I find, even at the highest institutions.
It's probably because it's almost, in quotes, boring, is why people don't do it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's...
But it's not boring if you think about what you just said.
It's so lovely to go... Because I find, again, that there's the most gold there. It's like when you really get an intuitive understanding of something that's fundamental to a technology. And for me, man, it might be the same in gymnastics, now that I think about it. For me, the reason that I don't focus on what's on the cutting edge is because we've talked about how, maybe not on the podcast, but how the significance of ideas has temporal symmetry. So if an idea has been in the news cycle for one day, it's likely to only be in the news cycle for one day. But if there's an idea like Einstein's general theory of relativity that's been around for 100 years, it's likely to be around for another 100 years. So if there's a paper or an idea that's been around for a month, it's likely to only be around for a month. That's a probability.
We even mentioned in the directing episode, the sonnet, the fact that it's been...
Correct. It's been around for centuries.
For so long that it's clearly something to it.
Something to it, and it speaks deeply to something within us. Otherwise, it never would have survived.
Yeah.
So the same thing. It's like if you can find a way of revolutionizing idea around standard deviation, just imagine what an incredible impact that would have on the world. That would be so huge, rather than coming up with a new neural network. So I'm always interested in disrupting ideas that have been around for an incredibly long period of time, because if you can do that, you'll have the most impact. Similarly, I think in gymnastics, if you can think about doing something fundamental that everybody assumes is an intrinsic aspect of the way we do certain movements, if you can actually, one thing that comes to mind is in rugby union, when people like when the ball goes out and you throw it back into the field, that you'll stand on somebody's shoulders to grab the ball. I think South Africa was the first team to do that, and the other people weren't doing that. They didn't realize that you could do that. So it's like there was a fundamental relearning about how you can throw the ball in, and even the Fosbury flop, with a high jump.
Yeah.
If you can reimagine these things that everybody takes to be assumptions, then there's so much upside in doing that. So for me, the most exciting thing to do is to get such a fundamental grasp, such a profound understanding of what's fundamental to your art. Because if you can change that, you're going to have such an outsized impact. So it's actually, for me, it's like the most important thing to focus on is getting a really, really strong grasp of the fundamentals. I don't focus on anything else, if I'm honest.
In I don't know if it's specifically gymnastics, but like a sport thing is the best do the basics better.
Yep.
So same kind of thing. Yeah.
So, maybe that guy who's tired, you could tell him this story about how the fundamentals are the most important thing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I did sit with him because the thing was like we were talking and I was just trying to think do I have any ideas of how to maybe turn this session around for him? And then in the end I was just listening to him and
great.
I mean it's not like he was he was bummed about not having a good session. That's fine. It is fine. Yeah.
Great.
Anyway. Yeah, it was interesting. Oh mate, you said something else. Oh yeah. I'm glad I made a note.
Nice.
Yeah, so you mentioned on this thing of when you're not in the mind space to code and you force yourself to code, and then it was just
rubbish.
Yeah, and then to untangle that was a bit more annoying than just not having done it at all.
100%.
Contrary to that, so I've been listening to Rick Rubin's book. Geez, I don't even know what it's called. The way. Something about art. Anyway,
Cool.
sorry, Rick. Good book. Anyway, in it, one section he's talking about almost like excuses to not start the thing or to not keep doing it. And it was really cool. He just listed a whole bunch of things, and one of them was feeling like you're not in the right mind space to start the thing or to do the thing. And I really liked him just sort of pointing that out, because I think especially with art, especially with the film, like I would always want to be like, oh, I want to make sure I'm like positive mindset, excited, energized, ready to do whatever it is. If it was writing or less so with directing, because you just have to do it on the day, you got no choice. But with editing too, like I definitely feel it with editing, because you can kind of do it whenever you want. And so when I'm doing it, I want to make sure I'm in the right mind space. But I realized at a certain point, like often you'll never feel like, oh, I'm in the perfect mind space for this. So if you are always thinking I need to be feeling like X to do this thing, that's like procrastinating in a way. And by actually starting to do the thing, I get myself in that mindset anyway. So I was just to be contrarian, because maybe it would be dangerous if you were thinking like, oh, I don't feel like coding today, or I'm not in the mindset, so I'm not going to do it. Yeah, that could keep happening, right, for a long time. Yeah,
absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I guess, yeah. So for me, man, it's like, as you know, I take, like, I almost think of myself as a mental athlete. Like I take my sleep really seriously. I'm a deep meditator. Like I take my mental space very seriously, and I try and put myself there. So it's like going back to this idea of responsibility. You want to take responsibility. You don't want to say, oh, mindset doesn't matter, so I can fuck around with I can drink alcohol and I can take drugs and I can not sleep, blah blah blah. It's like, no, actually, your mind state does matter to a certain extent. But the way that, I think similarly to what you were saying, the way that I kind of overcome that on the day is I will just forget about that. It's kind of what I was going to say with your friend as well. It depends on where the person's at, but all of those thoughts about, am I in the right mind state? Then I just like put my headphones on and I put binaural beats on and I put a Pomodoro timer on and I go, look, you're coding now, man.
Nice.
You can't think about, you've got no space to think about whether or not you're in the mind space.
Yeah.
And so I'll do that, and then I'll reassess how I feel. Yeah, because maybe it was a self-limiting thought, and oftentimes it is a self-limiting thought of like, oh, I'm not in the right mind space, and then you get into it, and you are in the right mind space.
Exactly what I was going to say. So you do it anyway, and then
reevaluate.
Yeah, not like after an entire day, but if after a Pomodoro 25 minutes,
exactly,
it's garbage.
Exactly.
At that point, you're like, all right, I'll take a break.
Yep.
Nice.
Yep, I'll take a break.
But most often you'd probably...
Yep.
Oh, that was good. Let's keep going.
Yeah, and then, like, to be honest, man, those days where I'm like, I'm not in the right mind space, those are very few and far between.
Yeah.
And so I will listen to that signal eventually, but...
Yeah, cool. So you got to listen to it, but often challenge it.
Yeah, I would say challenge it, and then but be have a balanced perspective.
Yeah.
And then there's always other stuff to do. That's what I found.
You really come around on the balance thing.
Yes.
Yes. I really want to talk about that later. That'd be very interesting.
It's interesting. We've got so many other topics that have been
because your comments on why balance may not be desirable in some cases, I really liked. So I want to talk.
Yeah,
about
it's
that.
like maybe I'm also playing devil's advocate. You know,
but I think they were valid.
We'll see.
Yeah. Maybe the application of balance is a balance. In fact, I think they say that in The Road Less Traveled. Yeah.
It might also be a semantic thing, because like I think that what I'm aiming for is like harmonization, integration, that kind of thing. I think what I'm not a fan of is a compromise. But anyway, we'll get into that. You just
spoiled the whole episode, man.
Oh!
Yes!
Just cut this out.
Yeah.
There's a huge beep. Yeah, man. So, I think it comes back to taking responsibility. You've got to take responsibility. There's in the two senses. You have a responsibility. In my case, it's like I feel that I have a responsibility to humanity. I don't know why, but I take it so personally that cancer is not treated very well. It's not acceptable. So I have a responsibility to humanity to do that. And then I also have a responsibility to myself that if I push myself, I do really bad quality work. I begin to not enjoy my day-to-day. I get sick. So there are all these negative consequences to pushing myself too much. So it's like integrating those dual responsibilities to kind of other and self.
Yeah. Very nice, man. Yeah. When we spoke about selfishness before as well, it's the same thing how we said, well, you can't be completely selfless because then you can't help anyone.
Yeah.
It's the same thing of needing to be in quite selfish, take care of yourself before you can really contribute.
I find it also, how am I going to phrase this? It's like, it's almost selfish to care about other people because it feels so damn good.
Yeah.
It's like, it is, it gives me a lot of joy to be working on things that I know can be helpful to a lot of people. So it's almost, when I was teaching chemistry and I felt that I was doing a really good job at it, and I continued to do it despite changing my field so far away from chemistry, it was so selfishly motivated of like, I feel so good about this and I would get so much energy out of it.
You feel good in the sense of fun and satisfaction.
Yeah. It's interesting because Andrew Huberman was saying that like when you feel burnt out, it's not because you're exhausted. It's because you feel that your efforts are ineffective. So that with chemistry, I always got my students to a place where they would have these kind of eureka moments. And because I felt that my teaching was effective, it was so energizing. I feel that the universe gives you energy back when it notices that you're being a good conduit, you know? So it was totally selfishly motivated that I just wanted to teach. Because of how good it made me feel.
Yeah.
So
you can say that about anything, though. I reckon.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I feel that the most short-term selfish goals actually aren't that fulfilling in the long run.
Yeah.
So there's almost like the universe kind of nudges you away from those things.
Yeah, I've found that I tend now more towards longer-term, harder. Yeah. Hard work in a way.
Yeah.
In quotes.
Delayed gratification.
Yeah. They also talk about that in The Road Less Traveled, mate. Yes. You guys should really read it. It's so good.
Oh, we should do an episode on that. You know?
Yeah. I'd want to read it beforehand just to be brushed up.
It.
Yeah. So we're saying responsibility is a good thing? Yes!
So we're saying.
yeah. Just putting all the crap in that.
It's something that I'm, it's funny as well because
cut back on the stupid jokes, mate.
No, please keep them. Please turn the dial up on them.
Okay.
And it's interesting because there's kind of like a woo-woo-ish definition around responsibility as well, like your ability to respond. And so for me, because it was interesting that, I haven't really said, but in talking about my career, I realized that it's not that I need to leave academia. It's more that I need to leave the role that I currently have in academia and kind of level up, that there's a new chapter here. So I had to respond to those kind of inner feelings. And I guess what I'm saying, I don't know about you, man, but I suppose I had these fears around being responsible for somebody. And those fears were based on a false premise that you need to be perfect in order to be responsible, or in order to take care of somebody or something. And I've just seen that as well with the people that it's like funny how like obviously I was able to get to these kind of like very successful and high up people. I've been lucky to do that in my career, and it's just funny how some of the people that are kind of at the top of the food chain are incredibly humble and just admit that they don't really know what to do. And just asking advice of these people, they'd be like, I don't know. Like, and I was like, oh, okay, wow. Like nobody really knows. And I was saying to one of my students that like uncertainty is non-negotiable. He was kind of saying to me like, I feel so lost and I don't know what's next. And I was like, that's how everybody feels. You're not alone in that. And the point is that we take a step forward, It's really easy to get caught up in this idea that you don't know which way to go. And so you get kind of stuck. You kind of freeze up. You get paralyzed by analyzing the situation. And I think it's just best to kind of take a step forward and see how you feel afterwards. Almost like we were talking about before, where it's like, am I in the right mind space? And the answer is, let's just see. Let's challenge that, by taking a step. So, yeah, you have this ability to kind of respond to the circumstances. You have that power. And, and I realized that in being responsible for somebody else, it's that's part and parcel of it, that you guide them through. That there are these responses that are available, and you might not have the 100% best perfect response, but you can be a guide. I don't know. In retrospect, it sounds so simple, but I had a mental block to accepting the role as somebody who is responsible for somebody else or for something important.
I wonder at the moment, I'm not really responsible for that much stuff myself. Like, because I think two things that I remember distinctly being like, oh, this is a big responsibility. It's mainly around kids.
Yeah.
I feel like there was one time when I was with a... Oh, yeah, that's it. Okay, so to become an advanced gymnastics coach, you have to have a athlete that you take with you to this assessment day and basically show the other assessors, this is how I would teach this skill. Here's my athlete, and I'll show you how I do it. And I remember, so I got this boy from the gym, graciously, his parents and that were cool with it, that he's probably like 10, 11 years old maybe. And so I had to pick him up from their place and take him to the gym, a different gym we normally train at, have him for a couple of hours and then take him back home. And when I picked him up, I was like, oh, damn, like this is heat, like this is hectic. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to make sure he had enough food. He had all the stuff he needed. When I was driving, I'm like, geez, I gotta be careful. Everything I was doing, I was more like responsible than usual. Like
yes.
And it just that moment, I was like, yeah, man, having a kid, like that's a lot. And that's probably the same for my brother's daughter. Like,
yes.
I don't think it's even happened. It probably for like 10 minutes, I've been, oh, he's got to go do something. Can you take care of her? No worries. And I'm like, damn, this is just a kid. I'm like, yeah, it feels like a huge responsibility.
Yeah.
Other than that, yeah. I don't know. Just the responsibility to myself is probably in terms of like being being the person I want to be, and doing the things I think I should be doing. Yeah.
It's interesting though, because like part of our individual freedom is that we're not responsible for that many things.
Yeah. Yeah, by choice as well.
By choice, yeah. Your life is like less stifling.
Yeah.
The fewer responsibilities you have.
But I do ultimately want to have kids, so I want to have that responsibility when I guess I'll never feel ready, but
yes,
when I feel it's more appropriate. Yeah. That's nice. You say you think do you say you think I'm a responsible person?
Or did you just hear that?
Yes. No, you said it.
Okay.
Kent? Yes. At the start, you when you were saying it, or you're like, and I think it'd be interesting to talk to you about it.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you didn't say you think I'm responsible, but you said those...
I said that, your natural tendency is to give things away.
Yeah.
And to share with other people.
Wait, so that's not responsible. Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, no, but you've taken responsibility of your life, that's for sure, because you're quite intentional with what you do. But it is interesting that neither one of us have a lot of people that depend on us, probably by choice, right? Because it's less stifling.
Yeah. Maybe we also feel like it's responsible to help others be independent in a way. You know that teach a man to fish
Sure.
thing. I should say it. Give man a fish, feed him for a day. Teach man to fish, feed him forever. I probably try and do that as much as I can. Not like maybe like a less secure way to be would be like, I want them to depend on me so that I have something of value to give them. I much prefer to just not worry, you know. It also goes to another Rick Rubin thing. He was saying how liberating it is when you have ideas as an artist to just use it straight away. Don't like save it for a later, better opportunity. He was talking about comedians, like if they have jokes, if they, I want to save that for a bigger event, it's stifling because you need to keep your mind, you know, I'll save that for later.
Yeah.
It's so much, and this is kind of how I am as well. Just say it, let it out. Even if like, maybe I could do this better later in a different area. Just do it now. You can, you know, it's more progressive, I guess. But maybe in the same way for the help people be independent. It doesn't matter if they don't need me. That's great, you know, in a way. You know, hopefully they become independent and still want to spend time with me. I don't know. That seems.
Oh yeah. It's interesting, man, because I think my version of that is help people become liberated. That for me, what I've realized is that a lot of things that people say you need, actually you don't need. That it's been really nice for me to find, like, when I feel that I need something, to just really dig into that and be like, do you need that? Or can you let go of it? And for me, it's like, there is a certain satisfaction in getting something, but there's such a satisfaction in being like, I actually don't need that thing at all. And so helping people to become liberated from things that they think they need. That
is independence, I suppose, right?
Yeah, independence.
Because you do not depend on, you don't need the thing at all.
Yep.
Yeah. And then I guess the goal being codependence, where, is that what it was? Interdependence. Yeah, where you like choose to have things, not because you need them, but because you choose to.
Because they're great. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Interesting, man. Well, the stuff on transcendence is, it seems a bit grandiose. Like, there's even the word transcendence, but I think it's just like less of a focus on yourself. You know, that there's an egotistical perspective. And then, as I said, like, I actually have more self-confidence when I look at myself through a third person perspective. And yeah, seeing yourself as kind of a cog in a larger ecosystem of things that are going on. For me, I don't know. I know for some people it seems a bit like it can lead to nihilism, to be like, I'm only this small thing and it's in a small rock in a floating universe, blah, blah, blah. But for me, it's like, it's very liberating to kind of zoom out and to think, I'm just this, I'm just part of the universe. You know, I'm having an experience, but all of that is integrated within a much larger whole. And when I zoom out and think of it from that perspective, all these other things of, like, you know, got to get enough money, got to get enough fame, got to get enough reputation, whatever, all of those things become way less of a concern. And I think that's because you asked in the Here episode, you asked what are the benefits of meditation, and I would say that's one of the biggest things that I've gleaned. That things that you think are problems actually aren't. They're just announced as problems, and they don't need to be solved. Actually, you can just let them go. Anything else coming up for you on the responsibility topic, man?
Well, the two other tiny things I'll just say was, I feel like probably a lot of people, if they're really honest with themselves, would have that same thought of, maybe I appear confident outwardly, but inwardly, maybe I don't feel as much as that. In the sense that you can't, it's more simple to look externally at what someone's doing than to ever be inside that. So
yes,
I imagine, I imagine that's probably the same for everyone, where no matter what you're doing, you're always thinking about things, and then you make a choice, and what people see is the choice. So just an interesting observation that probably most people feel like that too.
Yeah, right.
And the other thing was, on that last thing you were saying about I've kind of forgotten there.
Yes, I think, I was talking about the self-transcendence and going beyond the ego and letting go of things rather than having to solve problems.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I was just thinking that's interesting, letting go of things, tying that into neuroticism, in the sense of maybe I don't know if I have this definition correct, but it's neuroticism is assuming too much responsibility. Oh yeah, I suppose that would be assuming responsibility for problems that aren't actually problems. Just let it go. So again, that applying it in the right places, but letting the rest.
Yeah, as an example of that, man, like one of the things that I started to let go of was just like the need for validation from like external validation. There's a slippery slope there because you don't want to be an asshole to people. But like the need for other people to see you in a certain way. And just really disentangling that was like a huge, I mean, it's something that I still need to work on, but it's like when I began to work on that, it was like so huge to just let go of needing to be a certain thing for certain people.
Yeah, well, I think that's tricky because you do need to be recognized to some extent, because you get recognized by being paid in a way.
Yep.
You get recognized by being given opportunities. So if you are not at all, if that was extreme, like people know nothing about you, and then you will never get anything, right? Like, so yeah.
That's a good point, man. I probably am a bad self-promoter. I don't even have a LinkedIn page. So yeah, there are things, when you let go of certain materialistic things, there are certain consequences to that. That's for sure.
I feel like I'm similar, but my way of saying it is like I could put more effort into marketing than I do a lot of the things I do.
But you don't.
Yeah. But I'm aware
intentionally?
Well, I think it's because I probably ultimately don't want to spend my time and energy on that. But I also do think that might be foolish, and maybe I should at least pay someone else to do those things, you know? Because I guess for me it's more like things like of making videos about certain things. That's what I want to be doing. But if they're good, in the sense of the film, if we make a great film and then it just exists but no one sees it, then that's a big shame. So it makes sense to put effort into, or having someone else, like pay someone else to promote it so that more people see it. And what were we saying? How did we get to this? What was the word you used?
Materialistic? Letting go?
Of validation.
Validation, yeah.
Yeah, because I suppose with like the film, if it gets good reviews and like people enjoy it, that's validation. but I don't think that's like everything, I guess, as long as you're not obsessed with that. But it's probably important to the sense of like, if enough people like it, then do more of that, right? If it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. If no one ever sees it, then you'll have no idea, if it was good or not.
I mean, the way that I've kind of settled that in my mind, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, but I was saying to my boss, my invention's called Voxel Map, and I said to him, I would love it if Voxel Map was famous and I'm anonymous, so that I am promoting the thing, but I'm certainly not promoting myself. And yeah, maybe there will be downsides to that. Maybe I'll get less respect or reputation, or maybe even money, because they're like, don't associate it with me. But that's what I've more been doing, promoting the thing, and definitely not myself. And yeah, I was speaking to one of my colleagues recently, saying like, what I realized is that even if I'm not focused on a story of who I am, people still construct a story of who I am. So that part is out of my hands, and let's just let that part happen. I'm not that interested in like trying to control that part, like trying to control the story that they have about me. I'm just gonna, because the flip side of that is that you begin to change your actions such that they have a good story about you. So then, if it's right to do, then it's right for you. And maybe being a little bit more naive. But, because the other thing I think about this is that, like, something that's been said to me before is like, you're a 50% scientist and a 50% salesperson. And even if you don't think about it, you're always selling yourself, kind of thing. And I would say that, like, the people that believe that are people that I don't want to work with. So yeah, you are selling yourself, but you're selling yourself poorly to me. Maybe you'd sell yourself well to another person that subscribes to your view that you need to sell yourself. But for me, I really like people that feel uncomfortable about selling something, and it's certainly about selling something that you don't need.
Yeah.
And rather being like,
feels more genuine. Right?
That's what I'm more getting at. Yeah, that like, the people that sell themselves to me are people that are not trying to sell anything, that are just really genuine. And then I'm like, okay, great. This guy's trying not to trick me,
Yeah.
I love those kinds of people, and it just makes me want to work with them.
Yeah. Even a salesman. If you're working with them and they tell you some flaws in that.
Yep.
It makes them more compelling, because you think, okay, he's not doing anything he can to get this thing to happen. He's more trying to, if it's a good alignment, to then line it up for me, kind of thing. Yeah.
I know somebody was saying recently about like Warren, because when Warren Buffett does the shareholder meetings, they always start off by talking about exactly what they did wrong. And somebody on a podcast was saying like, it just made me immediately trust him, because he was like really upfront with his flaws.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, man, because like I'm potentially going to be in some situations where I'm going to be selling my invention to some companies, and it's like, do I want to start off with the worst aspects of the? I don't know if I want to do that, because that also might just be really silly.
Yeah.
But to be upfront about them doesn't mean you have to start with them. But like, I think the way that I'm more framing it is like, how do we make this great together? It's this is where it's at. And it could be better. How do we get there together? What do you need from me? And it's imperfect right now. Let's take the journey together to make it perfect. Or to make it good, whatever. Maybe not perfect. So yeah, you are always selling yourself to, in a certain sense, people are always making judgments about you. I don't know about you if you're selling, because that makes it sound like you're actively trying to get them to believe a story.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like I've kind of divorced myself from the product. And I want the product to do really well, because I think it'll be good for people. And it's got nothing to do with me. I'm merely a conduit.
Yeah. Once more to go back, how did you word it? The reputation, or what was the word?
Validation? Is it?
Yeah, validation. Yeah.
It's even a funny word now that you brought it up twice, because it's like, am I valid?
Yeah. Of course you are.
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird when you think about it in those terms.
If you're invalid, you're dead. Yeah. But yeah, okay. Well, because I think that's a good summary of what we're just talking about there. And I feel like, yeah, there needs to be some recognition and that kind of thing.
Yeah, okay.
Some public image as well of whatever the thing is. Doesn't have to be, maybe it doesn't have to always be associated directly with you, but maybe the credit matters, so that it helps people know he can do that,
Yeah.
He has that ability. Yeah.
It's funny because I had this conversation with that dude who lives on an island in Canada, and I was like, I'm really scared about being more of a known person. And he was the guy that said, well, you're not going to be Tom Cruise.
Yeah. It's a great line.
But he also said that in the position that he's in now, it just makes things way easier, because they go, oh, he's the guy that did that.
Yeah.
So it just means that he can be an even better conduit.
That's kind of the point, right? The natural, genuine point of the recognition is that more people know that guy's great for that kind of thing, so let's help him do that, right? Yeah,
but I suppose that where I landed, which was really useful for me, is that people now have a story about Nicholas Hindley that has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
So that's okay. Like, have that story, and especially if it's beneficial to people, that I can be a better conduit for X, Y, and Z. But I had to divorce the story of Nicholas Hindley from my ego.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was really useful.
Yeah, and not worry about it.
That's right. I don't need that to be valid.
Yeah.
To be validated.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, it's again coming back to this thing about the D needs, about, coming from a place of deficiency. Because on the other hand, it could be like, I don't feel that I'm good enough, or I'm not something enough, and if people believe this story about me, then I would be enough. And I just don't think that that's true, because that void can never be filled by, you can get all the validation in the world.
Yeah.
So then when I realized that, I was like, okay, cool. I'm going to set that. I'm going to let go of that. That is a bullshit need.
Yeah.
It's an infinite vacuum that can never be satisfied.
How did you have that epiphany? Was it by having validation and then realizing it wasn't as fulfilling?
Oh, I think it's a lot of things. I think it's like my Stoic training as well. Like, because Seneca talks about how if there's anything that you can get in an infinite amount, it's a bullshit goal. So you can have infinite sex, you can eat infinitely, you can get infinite money, you can get infinite fame.
You can't get infinite Bitcoin.
Yes. So therefore, crypto is valid.
Well, Bitcoin is.
Yes. So I think that was definitely part of it, but I don't know, man. It was just like a long.
That's interesting. I'll have to think about that. You can get infinite love, can you not?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
And I would say that's very valuable thing.
Yeah, that's a good one. I haven't thought about that one.
But I'm not saying I disagree with it either. I'm just, yeah.
He also doesn't say it's bad. He goes, you just should be wary of it. So yeah, I don't know. It's probably a long journey to that conclusion. Lots of journaling, lots of talking, lots of experiences, and then realizing.
I also love how you called it my Stoic training as opposed to study, because that's just really cool. To me, that means you've studied it but also applied it.
Yeah, there's no point in not applying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta get out there and get after it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of the Stoic wisdom is like the felt sense of what it feels like to live as a Stoic.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah.
But I'm also not tied to that, you know, like I don't want to identify as a Stoic because like there are some great thoughts everywhere.
Yeah, it's restrictive.
It's restrictive.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be, but yeah, there's some, what an amazingly powerful way of thinking. So, yeah, and I know with Marcus, like, you know, oftentimes he talks about like, there's this one pretty graphic passage where he says like, you know, a severed foot isn't useful, you know, that it needs to be integrated into the body. And a person who isolates themselves is also not useful, that they need to be integrated into society. So coming back to this idea of self-transcendence and a focus on goodness, justice, beauty, or those things.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very great, man. I also just love it. To me, that just sounds like such a positive, healthy society and world.
Yeah.
If
exactly
everyone was focused on themselves and also then offering that to the world, and yeah, that sounds beautiful.
I'm so optimistic about that just because like war is less prevalent, violence is less prevalent, poverty is less prevalent. Like I feel that we're very much even despite what the news will tell you, I think that we're very much moving towards a place where less people have these deficiency needs met. Less people are deficient in those needs is what I meant. Yeah. And so, yeah, hopefully we can focus more on things like self-actualization, self-transcendence, mastery, love, belonging, all of those things. I definitely want to be part of a world where we're kind of democratizing wealth and I feel that like people that are labeled as evil just don't have those D needs met. You know, it's so often that you hear about a person who's done terrible things and then you like just look at their childhood and it's like so understandable. It doesn't mean it's excusable, but it's like, let's make sure that less people have those kinds of childhoods if we can.
Yeah. Yeah, I still err on the side of everyone is a good person, or at least think they are doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't want to not believe that.
Mm-hmm.
I want to stay naive.
I like it. Beautiful, man. So any final thoughts on this topic of responsibility?
It's your responsibility to look internally.
Yes.
Is maybe like one for everyone, I would say. Maybe. Yes. Maybe that not many, or a lot may not. But I guess you also need to be high up on the self-actualization, you know, in terms of having those other needs met to get there. Yeah.
And then I think it's interesting that once you've looked internally and self-actualized, that then the turn is to express externally.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that goodness comes out into the world.
Help others with
that goodness wants to be expressed, you know? It's it feels so good.
Yeah.
To get goodness out there.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. In so many ways. It's like help others to meet those more basic needs so they can and help them be aware of the higher needs, maybe.
Gorgeous, man. Should I wrap up then?
Yeah, I think so.
I really enjoyed that podcast. Cool. It's interesting how we tied in so many things and how we had all of these similarities between gymnastics and whatever I do, data science. It's really inspiring.
Yeah. I agree, man. I love that. It seems to keep happening. Not even with just gymnastics, but with film as well. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something universal about going for things and self-actualizing That seems to be non-negotiable. Beautiful. Well, as always, guys, thanks for your time and attention. And until next time, see what's here when there's no problem to solve.